I'd like to introduce, on behalf of Ontario Soccer, Mr. Jason DeVos and Mr. Dave Nutt. Please welcome them.
Thanks, Dave. That was a fantastic introduction. It's great to be here. I'm really excited to be home. This is my hometown, London, Ontario. How many people we have here from London, Ontario? Excellent. Your family. So that means we can have an honest conversation, right? It might be tough at times, but it's coming from a place of love, which is an important thing. How many people were at John Herdman's presentation this morning? How exciting was that? Amazing, exactly. When I talk to people who haven't met John, who haven't heard his story, his vision of where he wants the men's program to go, the best way for me to explain it is, I wish I was 20 years younger. I wish I could pull on that jersey and climb that mountain with him. But I can't, unfortunately, can't roll back time. But I can help you get to the top of the mountain, each and every one of you. And there's going to be times where we're going to guide you by the hand and pull you. There's going to be other times where we've got to get behind you and push you. It's not easy to get to the top of a mountain. But we're going to do everything we can to help you contribute to taking the game to a new place in this country for both men and women. Because we've had success on the women's side, and we're going to have more success on the women's side. And we're looking forward to the Women's World Cup this summer to see what our team can do in that tournament. And it's on the men's side where we've really got a plan. And John showed you some of it. And it's really remarkable and it's really exciting. So I'm here today with my colleague Dave Nutt, the Manager of Development Operations, here to talk to you about club licensing. How many people here have read about club licensing? How many people know nothing about club licensing? A few, okay, which is good. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the goals, the approach, the principles behind why we're doing what we're doing. We're going to give you a little bit of an update on what we've learned so far, where we are right now, and where we're going, and how we're going to help you by working with Ontario Soccer, by working with your districts, by working with your clubs and academies to be part of this process. So we'll start with the goals. What are the primary goals of the club licensing program? Number one, set clearly defined standards and expectations. How many people have compared the soccer scene in Canada to the Wild West before? I have. Everyone's smiling. No one wants to raise their hand. Right? It's a little bit like the Wild West. Right? We're trying to bring standards. Standards are not punitive. Standards are there to help you to get better and to help your parents understand better what programs you run so they know what to expect when they come into your club. We want to recognize excellence. John made this point this morning, and it's been made over and over again over the course of the weekend. Some organizations, many organizations, are doing outstanding work in the game. We want to recognize that. We want to promote that. We want to share best practices with other clubs and academies across the country so that we can all get better. Because we want to raise the level of all soccer organizations in this country. It isn't about distinguishing who the good clubs and academies are and the bad clubs and academies are. It's not to do that. It's to help everyone get better, to grow and to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And we want to drive change in the soccer system. 2.5 years ago, I took this job. One of my first tasks was to go across the country and ask people, if you could start with a blank sheet of paper and design a development system for soccer in this country, would it look like what we have today? Not one person in the country put their hand up and said, yeah, we're doing a great job. Everything's fantastic. Every single person said, we need to change. The problem with change is everyone wants everyone else to change. Nobody wants to change themselves. Right? Change is hard. It's difficult. But we all know, we all agree that we have to change. We spend a lot of time researching and working with our provinces and territories, the districts, the clubs, to research what needs to change and how we can do that responsibly so that no one gets left behind, that everyone gets to come along on this ride, this magical journey that we're on, this beautiful time in the game where we have a World Cup, a men's World Cup looming on the horizon. Now is the time for us to make that change. And that's what club licensing is going to be about. It's about supporting you. So those are the primary goals. The approach is very different. And Dave's going to take you through that.
Thanks, Jason, and thanks everyone for having us. And again, I'm going to draw a little bit on John's presentation this morning because I think he set us up really well to be able to follow up on that today. So When I first met Jason, obviously I'd seen him as a player and knew who he was. He came out when I was the technical director for the Saskatchewan Soccer Association and spent a couple days with us asking those questions. You know, what does your system look like? What are your challenges? What are your barriers? What do you do well? And I was driving him out to the airport, and he said to me, you know, would you be interested to come and work for Canada Soccer? And I looked over at him and went, no, I'm good. What you have on your plate is too big, it's too hard. I'm happy here, I'm comfortable, and I think we've done a good job, but we've still got a lot more to do. And so he left it at that. He was good. He didn't push me too hard. He called me back in a couple of weeks, and very similar to the plea, if you want to call it that John made this morning to all of you about having a calling and having a need and wanting to be a part of the solution. He said to me, Dave, I want you to help me change soccer in this country. And those words came back, and I went, oh, that's really hard to turn down. I'm not sure I can do it, and I'm not sure what help I can be, but if you want me to help you, I'm willing to do it, and I'm willing to work hard, and I'm willing to do everything I can to help. And I've got a story probably similar to what John Herdman does in terms of my playing background. I played at the university level. I'm from Kitchener. I played in Waterloo, and wasn't good enough to play at the level that Jason did. It was the dream. But from there, decided that I wanted to be around the game, and it's been now almost 20 years doing mostly behind-the-scenes stuff, system building, membership development, and that type of work that isn't glamorous. It isn't the thing that you're going to see on TV, but I think it's important. And I know the people in this room, all of you are doing that work in your own clubs, in your own districts, in your own provinces, because it's important. And for me, that's the thing that's going to be able to take us from where we are today to where we want to be. And to hear someone like John Herdman reference it this morning, the idea that we've all got our little piece to play, and if we all are pulling in the same direction and we're working together and we're all rowing the boat to get to our desired destination, we have a chance. And the 10 years that I spent, almost 10 years in Saskatchewan, I was looking at places like Ontario and saying, you know what? If we're going to give ourselves a chance in Saskatchewan, we have to do everything right. We cannot afford to make mistakes. We can't afford to miss players. We can't afford to not use our resources, and we can't afford to not work together. Because Ontario, you have the advantage of having 300,000 registered players, of which you are picking 18 to play against Saskatchewan. We have 18,000 registered players, and we pick 18 too. So to give ourselves a chance, we have to do everything right. Ontario, you can do everything wrong, and still most of the time you'll probably win because you have more people. And the way that I've compared Saskatchewan to Ontario is the way Canada is in comparison to places like the US and Mexico. We're under-resourced, but if we do everything right and we work together, we give ourselves a chance because we can't afford to not. And for too long, we haven't given ourselves that chance. And hopefully, club licensing is the small part that I can play and work with all of you to be able to play, to be able to change the game in this country, to give ourselves a chance. Because I think if you check in your heart of hearts, everybody here wants to see us give ourselves a chance. There's nobody here that likes it when we don't succeed. There's nobody here that is happy to see things not go the way that we want it to. We'd all want to be proud to say, look, we've qualified for World Cups. We're having success at that level. The same way we're all proud when the women's team has success. So I think this is the contribution that I can make, and I'm asking all of you to come with me on that journey. And as we'll get to earlier on, there's been some, we'll call them the guinea pigs, some that are already on this journey with us. And I look around and I see a few of those people in the audience today. And it's not an easy journey. And we talk a lot in the work that I'm doing about emergence, about giving ourselves an opportunity to learn as we do. Because if we wait till we have all the answers before we start, the questions change. So we can't afford to wait until we have all the answers before we begin, because then it's too late. So we're going to start, and we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to learn. And we're going to get better, and we're going to make more mistakes, and we're going to learn. So this is version 1. You're at the access point, the entry ramp, and I can't tell you how we're going to get to where we're getting because it's going to change, but I can tell you where we want to go, and that's what we're going to try to do a little bit of today. So the part that's a little bit unique about where we're headed with regards to club licensing is the approach that we're taking. So it's not meant to be a prescriptive recipe card, do this, do this, do this, because soccer and the soccer environment in this country is complex. So there's 3 types of challenges from the research that I'm doing on system change and system building theory. There's simple problems, which are easy to solve because we know what the solution is. So baking a cake. Doesn't take a lot of expertise. If you follow the directions, you'll come up with something that's edible.
Speak for yourself, Dave. I'm a great baker of cakes.
Fair enough. If you're an excellent chef, you might be able to make a little bit better cake. But even if you've never cooked a cake before, if you take one of those boxes and you add water and you put it in the oven for the amount of time that they say, you're probably going to have something that we can eat at the end. So that's a simple problem because we know the answer, we know the solution, and we know how to be able to get there. You've also got complicated problems. So complicated problems are like a car. So I know nothing about cars. There might be some people with great knowledge in that area in the room. But if my car breaks down, I don't know the first thing about how to fix it. But there are people that have tremendous amount of expertise that if I take it to them, they can use their expertise to fix that car for me. And they use that by going through a series of tests. They have a series of things that they do to be able to test to see what the problem is. And once they identify what the problem is, they know the steps that they need to do to create the solution. So that's a complicated problem. Sending a person up in a space shuttle, it's complicated. But you know once you've built the space shuttle and it launches into space, you could build it again. You can put people in space again. So that's a complicated problem. A complex problem is when we don't have agreement on what the problem is. We don't have agreement on what the solution is. We all have different strengths, weaknesses, and power components in creating that solution. And it's a lot harder problem to work with. So complicated and simple problems are easy to solve. Complex problems are a lot harder, which call for unique solutions and the allowance for emergence. So our unique solution is, first of all, we want to define the characteristics and behaviors that we're looking for from the soccer community. And I'm going to talk in a minute about principles because that's the approach that we're taking in that area. But we want to know what we're looking for. How can we evaluate or appraise someone against a set of metrics if we don't know what they're asking of you? So first of all, you need to know what your job is. You need to know what you're asked for. You need to know what role you play in the overall system. The next piece of that is we want to drive positive behaviors and stimulate change. So like Jason said, things need to be different. We need to do something different from what we've always done, because if you always do what you've always done, you'll always be what you've always been. And that's not good enough. We want to be better than that. So I'll give you a quick example of what I mean there. So I use this in a lot of these presentations, so forgive me if you've been in a room where I've used this analogy again. So if I told you, as I know there's some coaches in the room, I know there's some technical directors, that the way we're going to decide who the best 50 clubs are in the country is we're going to have a tournament for 13-year-olds. The more games you win, teams that finish in the top 50, those are going to be our best 50 clubs. So you as a coach, you as a technical director are probably going to set yourself up in a certain way in order to ensure you achieve success. So you might play a style of soccer that at U13 is going to lead to results. You might look at the biggest, strongest, fastest kids, make sure that they get a good opportunity to be able to be in that team. You might shorten your bench and only start with 13 or 14 players that are going to play in those environments because that's what's going to lead to success. You might even look at the guys down the street and go, you know what, they got a couple of good players. Maybe I could convince them to come join me, because that's going to lead to the thing that's going to identify your success. So you need to measure what matters. So if we tell you what matters is an under 13 competition, you're going to behave in a certain way to be able to achieve success at that level. Alternatively, if I told you what matters is the number of players that you're attracting to the game, how long you're keeping them in the game, whether you're progressing them to higher levels of play, and whether when the time's right, you're transitioning them into other meaningful roles in the game, coaching, refereeing, administration, board members, volunteers, all the great supports that we need to make this system work. You as a coach, you as a technical director, you as a board member might behave entirely differently. So if we know that your job is to keep kids playing the game and move them on to higher levels, and that's what we're going to measure, you're probably not going to worry too much about taking the big, strong, fast kid. You're probably not going to worry too much about looking around, going down the street and plucking off the kids that can play from another environment. You're going to focus on doing the best job that you possibly can to create an environment that's going to allow you to achieve those goals. So by measuring what matters, we're able to stimulate change within the soccer environment. And then the final piece of it is we want to assess outcomes. We want to be able to identify the great work that's going on. We want to be able to share it. If it's something that's scalable, we want to be able to scale it. And we want to be able to help all of you get better. So that's the approach that we're taking with club licensing. And that's the part that's a little bit different, because the pieces that are there, for me anyway, the classification exercise, the sorting into piles, that's the least exciting. The driving change, the helping organizations get better, and the improvement, that's the part that's fun. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. That's what makes me work hard to do the things that we're doing, is because I think we can do better. Not just I think, I know we can. And this is the approach that we're taking to trying to help people do that. And in support of that, we're taking a principles-based approach. So what a principle is it provides direction but not detailed prescription. So because we're working in complex environments, we need to be able to recognize that they're all different, and a solution that works in one might not work in another. But we want you to follow a set of principles and implement them as best you can within your own unique context. What that does is allows you as an organization to select the methods that work. I don't know soccer in London nearly as well as the people that work in soccer in London do. You know what's going to work here, and it's not going to be the same thing that's going to work in Kitchener. It's not going to be the same thing that's going to work in Windsor, and it's not going to be the same thing that's going to work in Saskatoon or Vancouver. So you're the experts. Within that set of principles, you need to select the methods that are going to lead you to success and the desired outcomes within your community. And the final piece of that is it allows you to consider the resources that you have available in your unique situation. So what's special about the area that I work that's going to allow me to align these principles and be successful and be the best possible club that I can and have the biggest possible impact in our communities? So there's a great quote that we use in our presentations with regards to principles versus methods, and it's from Harrington Emerson, who was an inventor from the early 1900s. And what he said is, as to methods, there may be a million and then some, but principles are few. The person who grasps principles can successfully select their own methods. The person who tries methods ignoring principles is sure to have trouble. And what that means to me is I can't give you a recipe card. I can't say if you do this, this, and this, you'll be a successful soccer club, because I don't know your context. What I can say is, here's some things that you should consider. Here's some things that you should think about. Here's some ideas that you might want to try, but you're the expert. Take these ideas, take these principles, and you figure out the best way to be able to implement those within your environment. So what those principles are, first one is prioritize fun. Number one reason why kids play sport, because it's fun. Number one reason why kids drop out of sports, it's no longer fun. Remember, these are kids. They want to be a part of your environment because it's fun. So what can we do to prioritize fun? And that's going to be different, again, based on your context. What's fun for a League One Ontario player might not be fun for a 6-year-old. But everyone wants to have fun. So Jason, you played at international level. When you played for Canada, was it fun? Did you play because it was fun?
Yeah.
Is it the same fun as when your 5- and 6-year-old kids play?
Not the same kind of context, no. But it was about falling in love with the game of some kind. One thing that people seem to misunderstand about the professional game and how hard you have to push yourself, that's actually fun. Pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone into that space where you're going to grow and learn. That's a fun part of being a professional athlete. It's one of the things I miss most. But that doesn't mean you have to do that with a 6-year-old. You shouldn't be doing that with a 6-year-old, because fun is different for them.
Next one, emphasize physical, mental, and emotional safety. So those that are following the news right now, the world's a scary place. One thing I can tell you for certain, and I've got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, so I'm kind of right in this wheelhouse, is when I send my kids, and I think when every parent sends their precious children to us as soccer clubs, there's an expectation that they're going into safe environments and that we're going to take care of their kids and nothing bad is going to happen. We're going to treat them as if they were our own. So for me, this idea of creating physical space that's safe, so are our facilities safe, nothing bad is going to happen, we're not going to get hit by lightning, the roof isn't going to fall on them, that's part of it. But more importantly, particularly right now in the way the world is, making sure we've got safe mental and emotional places. So are we creating those environments intentionally? And what training and support are we providing? I see Wayne's in the room, and I know Ontario Soccer have been great leaders with regards to the respect movement and the great work that the Respect Group have done, respect in sport, respect in the workplace, the Respect Parent program. What are the things that we're doing intentionally to make sure that our environments are as safe as we possibly can? Because that's got to underline everything we do. So one of our principles speaks about emphasizing safety. Next one, we want to provide developmentally appropriate, high-quality programs. So what we do with 18-year-olds is not the same thing we do with 6-year-olds. LTPD is the framework we use there to identify what a quality, developmentally appropriate environment looks like based on your different stages of development. Next one, we want to maximize attraction, holistic personal development, progression, and long-term engagement. So those are those measures that I talked about, bringing kids into the game, keeping them playing the game as long as we possibly can, moving them on to higher levels of play if they're ready, and transitioning them into different environments. And as we develop them, we develop the person. So John was talking about the 0.01% of the kids out there that are going to play for Canada. And we need that, and we want to make sure those kids are well developed. But what are the other 99.99% of the kids in our environments getting? The ones that are never going to play for Canada, but that we can impact positively, that can become great leaders in our communities, that can become great coaches, that can sit in these chairs in 10 years' time when we've all moved on and lead the game to a better place than we left it. And I think for most parents, when they're signing their kids up to come in and play with us, that's what they want. Some of them might dream that their kid's going to one day play for Canada, they're going to get a scholarship, they're going to be, the next Christine Sinclair or Atiba Hutchinson, but I think most of them want them to gain the positive benefits that sport can have. So are we creating environments that look after the person and develop them from a holistic perspective? Next one, we want to focus on participant-centered decision making. So the kids and the participants, the players, the coaches, the referees, that is the game. It's about them. It's not about systems, it's not about structures, it's not about rules and regs or policies. It's about the people. So what are we doing to make sure that the people are at the center of everything we do? We want to foster accessible, inclusive, and welcoming environments. For those that were there yesterday, Matt Greenwood led a great session about what that actually means. And again, because it's a principle, this is going to mean different things to different people. So what an accessible, inclusive, and welcoming environment might look like in Saskatoon is a very different thing than what it might look like in London, what it might look like in inner city Toronto, what it might look like in St. John's, Newfoundland. But the idea being that anyone who wants to play this game should have that opportunity. And it's our obligation to be able to find ways to do that. So can we make sure that our game is accessible, which is an outcome? Can people get through the door? And once they're through the door, can it be inclusive and welcoming, which are behaviors, which means they're ongoing? What are we doing to make sure people feel a part of something bigger? Presentations like John Herdman gave this morning made me feel like I was a part of something bigger. I'm not just Dave that lives in Saskatoon and does club licensing. I have a role to play in helping everyone move forward. I felt like I was included in that family, and I hope all of you did too. So what are we doing in our environments to make sure that our people feel included and welcome? And the last one, act as a good corporate and community citizen. So as soccer clubs, can we be something bigger than the provider of a soccer program? What are we doing to positively influence the community that we live in? Are we helping develop better people, and are they giving back to the community? Are we as a club giving back to the community? Are we having a positive impact? And are we being good corporate citizens? Are we playing nice in the sandbox? Jason spoke about that last night. John reinforced it this morning. Stop fighting. Stop arguing. Stop letting adult problems and the inability to get along with each other prevent us from making our game great. Be a good corporate citizen. Don't be that club that nobody likes. Be the club that's a great partner that everyone wants to play against, that everyone wants to be involved with, that everyone is excited when you have the opportunity to get involved with. Be that guy. Don't be the one whose coaches are sitting in the parking lot waiting for another team to come off the field so you can recruit their players. Don't be that guy. Live above that 80% line. I love that.
One of the reasons I was really excited about coming here to my hometown was to talk about this. It's exhausting. 10 years ago, 11 years ago actually, I moved back to London. It's my hometown. My parents are here, my family's here, brought my family back. Within a year, I'd realized how messed up the soccer community was here. Everyone dividing. I don't like you, Dave Nutt, so I'm going to take all my teams and I'm going to leave and I'm going to start my own club. And it's still happening today. Subdivide. There's a fixed pool of players here. We pitched an idea. I remember sitting in Ian Campbell's house, club representatives from London in 2009, pitched an idea. Here's an idea. Why don't we amalgamate? Why don't we all come together and create one club? You got about 15,000 players in this surrounding area. Why can't we work together as adults? Because everyone in the room, when I ask you the question, why do you do what you do? I do it for the kids. I really do it for the kids. I call bullshit. It's bullshit. If you really are doing it for the kids, put down your ego, put down your weapons, stop fighting with people, be an adult, be an example for your children. Show them what it means to work together with people that you might have a difference of opinion with. Because I have differences of opinion with Dave Nutt and Stuart Neely and Bobby Lennox and Jim Laughlin. My staff, the people that I know, have my back. That if somebody comes for me on my blind side, they're going to come over the top and smash them in the face with a baseball bat because they're on my side. And I know that. But I have differences of opinion with them all the time. And we argue. My daughter, 16 years old, said to me once, "Is Stuart Neely your best friend?" I said, "Well, that's a good question." I said, "Why do you ask?" She said, "Well, whenever you pick me up from work, you're always on the phone with him." And then she said, "Do you like him though? Like, do you guys get on? Because you argue a lot." I said, "Yeah, we do. But we argue because we want to be the best. We want to be the best. We want everyone in this country to be the best. So we can have differences of opinion, but as soon as we have that discussion, it's one message, one voice that comes from us. Not in this community." And those of you who are in this community, you know that this is true. It's been happening for decades. When I was a kid, there was one club, London Youth. Every kid in the surrounding area of London knew that that was the club to play for if you were going to a higher level. And it subdivided. And now, how many clubs are there in London? 26? 64? 100 and something? Who knows? You're fighting against each other. For what? For the outcome of we're the best U13 team. We won the Under-8 World Cup. There is no Under-8 World Cup. It doesn't exist. Your job is to create a great environment for those kids to go on and achieve their dreams, not yours. Not yours. And that's a hard thing to do. But when I said we're family, we are family. We can have tough conversations. And if you don't like what I'm saying, come talk to me afterwards. We'll have a conversation about it. I don't have a problem with that. But it has to be said. We've got to start working together if we're going to get up this mountain. Or you can continue walking on your rolling hills thinking you're the king of your kingdom. You're not. Because I'll tell you, I had to fight to get out of this city. I had to drive to Toronto every weekend. Stayed with Jamie Shannon. Where's Jamie Shannon? Is he in the room? At the back of the room. Jamie Shannon. I stayed with his family for 3 years. U14, U15, U16. Every weekend. To go to the NTC training center, Provincial Team Training Center. And he was hospitable enough to put me up. And if I didn't have that chance, I wouldn't have made it. Because it wouldn't have happened in this community. There wasn't an environment that I needed to fulfill my potential. Now we're trying to create those environments in communities like this, but it's not going to happen unless we work together and we stop fighting each other. Sorry, Dave. My staff, they call me the hijacker because I tend to hijack presentations and go on rants, so I'll hand it back to Dave.
That's all right. So that's the philosophical approach. Those are the principles. That's where we're coming from. This is the practical piece. This is how we classify clubs. Some of you will have seen this already. Some of you are involved in it right now. But this is the part that's a little bit less exciting. It's a little bit standard. It's a little bit what everybody does when they go through this type of activity. So there's 4 levels. We've tried to make them relevant in terms of the language that we use around them. So our base level, our foundational requirements are the standards for quality soccer. So these are the things that we believe you need to be able to do in order to be considered a provider of quality soccer. And that aligns to our principles. It's about providing safe, accessible, inclusive, developmentally appropriate environments in order to be able to make sure that kids get a great opportunity to be able to enjoy their experience in soccer. In between that, we've got 1 to 2 levels of provincial youth club level license. Those are for organizations that are able to do a little bit more, align at a little bit higher level within the organizational structure of the province. And the reason it's 1 to 2 is that's a little bit unique, like I talked about, to the context. So what we're doing in Ontario is not the same thing that's going to happen in PEI where there's 5,000 players, because it doesn't work that way there. Here there'll be 2 levels in there, and I'm going to talk about it in a second, but Ontario Soccer have been tremendous partners. Gabe and Gabriella, I know, are here over on the side with Johnny and Gary in support. They've done a great job of translating the national vision into the provincial reality, and we've done that together. We're on the same page. We're working in concert, which again is something, having worked at the provincial level for almost 10 years, can't always be said about way things have worked at the provincial level versus the national, but we're now on the same page and we're pulling in the same direction. So 2 levels at the provincial license level in Ontario, and then our national youth club license organizations, which is our highest level of licensing in the country. And then beside that, we've got our national club license. So that's for our professional, semi-professional clubs and aligns to the Canadian Championships. So that's our CPL clubs, our MLS clubs, and our standards-based senior clubs that end up in that environment. So that's what the framework looks like. Information on the criteria for each one of those frameworks is available. It's on our website. It's on Ontario Soccer's website. So if you're interested in the nuts and bolts, the what do I have to do, what boxes do I need to tick to be able to classify into those areas, it's all available to you. The one thing I will say is the goal of this exercise is not to take every organization and shove them from here across to there. That's not the goal. Providers of quality soccer are essential to the soccer development in this country. Those volunteer-based organizations with a handful of teams that do a great job in small communities across this country, that's the lifeblood of our sport. That's how players get their start. That's how they fall in love with the game. The goal is not to push them over here where they're national youth club licensed. The goal is to make them the best possible standards for quality soccer organization as we can. Thank you. And I think John spoke to it really well. It's about role clarity. What's the role of those grassroots organizations all across our country, and how well can they do that role? Because if they do a great job, it becomes a lot easier to operate at this level. If you have every community across this country running a great soccer program where 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds can sign up, play in their home community with their friends, have a great experience and fall in love with the game, there's going to be more kids that end up over in these environments when they do need that extra support like Jason talked about to be able to get to that next level. And then it's about identifying those environments and helping them make the best possible use of their resources to be able to develop players and coaches. So how do we help everybody get better within this framework? And again, like I said, this part isn't as exciting to me. This is standard. Yeah, we're going to sort you into piles. All well and good, but once we've done the sorting, that's when the fun begins. That's when the excitement's there. How do we help everybody get better, and how do you help the people in your environment get better? Your coaches, your players, your referees, your administrators. So that's what the overall program looks like. We've started this, we've launched it in Ontario, and Jason's going to tell us a little bit about the journey we've had over the past, what is it now, 7, 8 months?
Coming up to 7.5 months, yeah. Yeah. So where are we now with the launch of this? And obviously Ontario Soccer has just released their information about the standards for quality soccer, which I'm going to tell you this. Every single organization in this country, nonprofit community clubs, private academies, fully professionalized staff, completely volunteer-driven staff, every single organization, and go back to it, can do this. It's been designed to be 100% inclusive. You have to provide a safe, enjoyable, accessible, and inclusive, developmentally appropriate environment. It's that simple. And every organization that runs a soccer program in this country can do this and should do this. Okay? So where are we now? We started at the top with the National Youth Club License, which is for the organizations that are currently in the OPDL. We invited applications. We launched in July of 2018, and we had those organizations submit a letter of intent. And we did this in Ontario with the OPDL groups. We did it in BC with the BCSPL groups, the 8 clubs there. And we also invited applications from organizations in Alberta, because Alberta Soccer has been trying to get a standards-based league off the ground for the last 7 years, and the adults haven't been able to get it done. They haven't been able to come to an agreement to work together to create those environments for the kids there. And they felt strongly that this would be the push to get them over the line. And that's going to happen. Quebec, the same thing. We're planning on launching a standards-based league in Quebec in 2021 with the work of our friends at Quebec Soccer. They're doing a fantastic job. In October was the document submission deadline. So all the documentation that we asked for came in from the clubs in the OPDL. In January, we began the review. We had 44 applicant submissions from Ontario, BC, and Alberta. February and April, where we are right now, we're doing in-person review meetings. So I was out in BC a couple weeks back, did the 8 review clubs of the 8 clubs in the BCSPL. Dave and I are going through the process of fully reviewing all the Ontario clubs, the OPDL groups. Dave's going to be in Alberta next week, 2 weeks from now, to do all of the reviews in person. And a review is not like going into the auditor. It's not a confrontational process. It's a supportive process. We identify the things that you're doing well, we identify the areas that you need support, and we come up with an action plan to help you get better. In May, we're going to make the announcement of the first wave of successful applicants from Ontario, BC, and Alberta. And then in July, we start the process over again. Because it isn't about cutting off the line saying these are the only organizations that are good in this country. We want everybody to be good. We want everyone to have an opportunity to get better and to improve and to run great programs. So what have we learned? This has been a fascinating journey for us, for Canada Soccer, to get a sense of what's really going on at the grassroots level. And there's a lot of great work that is going on. And there's areas where we need to grow.
So what we've done in reviewing those 44 applications is we've tried to identify some common themes, some areas that we need to support aligned to our principles, and the first things that we're going to focus and what we're going to do to be able to help people. So the first one, and a lot of you I'm sure follow the news in the soccer community and outside, safety is a priority. Safety is a priority from the Government of Canada. Safety is a priority from Sport Canada. Safety is something we need to be able to make sure is in our place within our organization. So how do we do that? We work with people like Respect Group. We work with people like the Canadian Centre for Child Protection. We develop resources to help our clubs create safe environments. So what will come out, I hope, in the next couple of weeks is the Canada Soccer Guide to Safety that's meant to help clubs create safe environments. It involves training, it involves policies, it involves support, it involves making sure that we do the right things to make sure our kids are safe. So the number one thing that we've taken out of this is safety is a priority, and we need to put work in and be intentional in that area to make sure that we're creating safe environments before we think about anything else.
The next piece that we've learned is that planning matters. The organizations who are the most successful, and I don't mean successful in terms that their trophy cabinet's full, because it's easy to cheat success in youth soccer, but I mean the most successful in that they're retaining their players, they're providing a great program, their retention rates are high, they're advancing players to higher levels of the sport, and they're keeping them in the game, either as coaches, referees, volunteers, or officials of some sort. Planning matters. We call it the Holy Trinity: strategic plan, technical plan, operational plan. Strategic plan is set by your board if you're a nonprofit community club. They determine the direction that you're going to go. What are the initiatives that you're going to prioritize as an organization? Your technical plan is how your technical staff is going to execute those strategic visions. And your operational plan tells how you're going to do it all. It's not a difficult process, doesn't need to be 100 pages long. If you look back a couple weeks ago, Canada Soccer launched our next 3-year strategic plan, 27 initiatives. As soon as it was announced and we saw the final draft, we started crafting our technical plan in our department. How are we going to execute these initiatives? And from that, we build our operational plan. How are we going to do the work that we need to do to execute the goals that we have for each of those initiatives? The organizations that know what they're doing the best have those documents in place. The ones who don't, they don't have a blueprint. They don't have a roadmap. They don't have a compass. They go from one dumpster fire to the next, one emergency to the next, and they shift with the wind. And that's not sustainable. Planning matters. It's an important piece.
And what we're going to do to help is we're going to support you in that area. We're going to provide you with templates. We're going to provide you with exemplars, people that do a really good job of this so you can see. And we're going to provide workshop support so that you can develop your technical plans. We're going to provide training to technical directors, because in this country, there is no training right now other than what Ontario Soccer does, which is a great starting point, and they've taken that initiative because it hasn't happened nationally. Ontario Soccer have done a great job of developing technical leader training, which goes into some of that work because it didn't exist nationally. Now it's time to nationalize that, and it's time to make sure that people in those technical leadership roles understand their roles and responsibilities and know how to execute them. So I know from talking to technical directors across the country, there's no place where you go to school to learn how to make a technical plan. We need to be able to provide that if that's one of the priorities and that's one of the areas that organizations need work. And the same thing for our administrative leaders, our executive directors, general managers, operations managers, whatever they're called within your organizations. How do we develop an operational plan so that we can be held accountable to what we said we were going to do with the resources that we have and the timelines that we've got? Next piece, good governance is important and it takes time to implement. So for those of you that follow governance closely, and I'm sure that's a lot of you, you know that Canada Soccer has undergone a governance change. Ontario Soccer have done a great job of implementing a modern governance structure at the provincial level. We need to get to that point at the club level. Not every club, but those that have the capacity to implement modern governance need to move in that direction, where boards are responsible for setting strategic direction and oversight of what's going on within the club. Not selecting coaches, not picking teams, not all of these things that operational boards have done, but providing support and direction to their professionals who carry out that task within their organization. And because this takes time, because this involves bylaw reform, because this involves governance policy development, executive limitations, all of these types of things that take time to develop, if we're going to be there in 2021, 2022, 2023, we need to start today. So good governance is important and it takes time to implement. In order to get the leadership that we need within organizations from an administrative and a technical level, you need to empower those people to do their jobs. And as boards, we need to be able to set the foundation and the structure so that they know what those jobs are. And then we all need to have the professional knowledge to be able to carry out our jobs effectively. So good governance is important and it takes time to implement. So what we're going to be doing over the next year, and for those that have filled out National Youth Club license applications, you know that one of the questions in there is, would you be interested in a good governance workshop from a Canada Soccer expert? And of the 44 people that applied, 43 said yes, and one accidentally clicked no. Because we followed up with them and they went, yeah, we need that. So everyone has said, come give us some help here. So we've got some expertise, and we're going to start to develop that. We ran a good governance workshop with Don Story, who's the chair of governance for Canada Soccer in Winnipeg. That was the first trial on that. It'll come to Ontario, it'll come to BC, it'll come to Alberta, because that's a support that we need to be able to provide to our clubs if we're going to move in that direction in the coming years. It doesn't happen overnight. You can't get there quickly, and not every organization is structured in a way that that's an effective means of governance. But for those that are, we need to be able to help you. Good governance is important, and it takes time.
This is something that comes out very clearly in all the reviews that we've done, that the role of the technical director at a club is very unclear. You know, you look at most job descriptions now of a technical director talk about things like oversight of staff, which is a human resources specialty, management of financial budget, strategic planning, technical planning, conflict resolution, dealing with parent groups. How many technical directors do we have in the room? Quite a few, right? Sometimes you feel overwhelmed because you never get a phone call from anybody to say, hey, you know what, you're doing a great job, keep it up, you're fantastic. It's always the complaint, right? Say the same thing for board members. How many board members we have here? Fair few, right? Probably don't get a lot of Christmas cards from people telling you what a great job you've done and thanking you for all your hard work, right? When we first started going through this process, I said to Dave, I think we've got a title for this book we're going to write at the end of all this. It's going to be called We Don't Know What We Don't Know. And that applies to governance, you know, and the help that the boards out there want indicates that we, us, Canada Soccer, Ontario Soccer, have to do a better job of providing those resources and helping to educate. And that definitely applies in this area. We've seen great examples from some organizations in this province and in other provinces of what a technical director does. It primarily revolves around coach education. It has to. And that's something that we have to define. Coach education piece is the next one. That's an enormous task, but we have to start investing more in our coaches. One of the analogies that I always use to try and explain to people why a technical director's role is important and why investing in coaches is important is I compare it to a restaurant. If you own a restaurant, who's the most important member of your staff? And I've asked this question before, so some of you have probably already heard this, right? Who's the most important member of your staff? The chef, right? The person that's cooking the food. So who's cooking the food in a soccer club? Who's the one that's out there delivering your program on your behalf as an organization every single day with your players? Your coaches. So if we're not going to invest in our coaches, what are we doing? BC Soccer, who's in the room today, just released a player retention survey. The data from that was fascinating. I read it. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, I wasn't happy with the number, but it hammered home the point. Of those individuals who had a less than stellar experience with the game, 39% said it was down to poor coaching. 39%. That's staggering. Staggering. We have to invest more in coach education. And you're not going to lose all your players because you tell their parents, you know what, we're going to have to raise your fees $5 because we want to make sure that every single one of our coaches is trained in respect and sport and appropriately trained in the skills they need to be a good coach for your child. It's the cost of a coffee at Starbucks. I don't think any parent's going to do that. Right? We have to be brave enough to step forward, go off the path that we've always been on, as John said this morning. Create our own path, a new path, a better path than what we've been on for however many decades that we've been on. And again, I'm glad we're in London. One of the things that we found in our research from going across the country was coach education's hard. It's really hard to take time off work. It's hard to go to Toronto or Vancouver or Calgary or Montreal or wherever the course is being run. It costs too much money to fly there. But you know what we did? We said, hey, we're going to bring the coach education to you. We're going to bring the coach education to you so you don't have to travel. And we're going to try and run it on weekends so you don't have to take time off work. We're going to try and run it in the summer so you can actually take some holidays and maybe you can work it around your schedule. We need to bring the coach education to the coaches. And we said, you know what? We're going to run a children's license course across the country. 9 different locations. One of them was this city. And this city's never had a great appetite for coach education. It hasn't. A lot of experts in London, right? I said we were family. We're going to have a tough conversation. So we brought the course here. I was disappointed with the response from this community at the number of London-based people who registered for the course. Only 3. Think of the thousands of kids that are playing soccer in this community. If you're a parent, how many parents are here? Parents, kids play soccer, right? Is your coach appropriately trained? Do they have the qualifications they need? How many clubs here pay salaries to coaches? A lot. These courses are designed to give your coaches the expertise, the knowledge, the training they need to deliver a great program for your kids. And the appetite was poor. And that's got to get better. That has to improve. So what's next, Dave Nutt?
It's an exciting day, and I'll give great credit and great respect to Ontario Soccer for moving this forward. So yesterday, the big announcement, all levels of the club licensing program are now available as of May 1st, 2019. But Gabe and Gabriella and Gary and Johnny have been so supportive. They've been so excited about this. They've taken the bull by the horns, and there were points where they were pushing me saying, Dave, we need to get this faster. This is when you said you would have it. We need it faster so we can move because there's an appetite and we're excited. And they've pulled that together and they brought it to fruition. And I don't want to steal their thunder, but because this information is available, I'll present it here as well in case you haven't had time to read that information because you were too busy in all the great sessions we've had over the last couple of days. So to start us off, our standards for quality soccer and our provincial youth club license levels 1s and 2s. So our letters of intent we're looking for between yesterday and March 17th. From there, between March 22nd and April 30th is your application window. That's when you need to get your documentation together. That's when you need to get that information into Ontario Soccer. And then between May 1st and July 31st, that's when they do their reviews, and they send a report to Canada Soccer that says, this is what we've seen. These are the organizations that we think belong at that level. And as partners, we get together and say, yeah, agree completely. This looks fantastic. Go ahead. Let's put the Canada logo on those organizations that have achieved those standards, which is going to be exciting because that'll be the first group of provincial youth club licenses that we'll have in the country. So exciting opportunity to move all of those forward, and it'll be amongst the first standards of quality soccer in the country, depending on how quickly other reviews come in. But certainly the first organization to be able to implement top to bottom, and I'm excited about that. My implementation plan had us getting to this point in 2021. So we're ahead of the curve, and it's a full credit to the people at Ontario Soccer that have done a great job on this. And I know, having done it for 8 years, working at a provincial body is not easy. It's hard work, and as Jason said, there aren't too many of you sending Christmas cards to Ontario Soccer saying, you guys are doing a great job, keep up the great work. But they get a lot of calls saying, why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. Stop it. You're making our lives miserable. You're doing this to punish us. And I can tell you right now, these guys have worked, and girls have worked night and day to be able to get this ready so that this province can be in a position to be able to implement first. So full credit to them. They've done an outstanding job. And the other piece to the puzzle, which is getting into the second cycle, would be our OPDL/National Youth Club license. And the other thing that again, in working together and showing that we're partners and trying to move this together, is it's an integrated process between OPDL and National Youth Club license applications.
So just for clarity, you can't get a National Youth Club license unless you are in the OPDL. That's one of the criteria that's written into the National Youth Club license. You must participate in your province's top level league, which is the OPDL. So we get questions all the time. We get applications sometimes. We had applications from academies who weren't in the OPDL that wanted to sort of circumvent that process. We've said to everyone, the stepping stone is apply to be in the OPDL and then submit a letter of intent to join the National Youth Club license. Okay?
So that process is open for those that are moving through it. Have until March 8th to be able to get your letters of intent into Ontario Soccer. From there, stage 1 documentation by the end of March, with your review afterwards by the end of April. Second stage will continue on from there by the end of, by June 7th. And your review on July 31st, which coincides with the opening of the National Youth Club license application process on July 31st as well. So the letter of intent then comes in from Canada Soccer. August 31st, the OPDL announcement about those successful organizations, as well as the requirement of your letter of intent for Canada Soccer and National Youth Club license application and the opening of that portal. The great part about the way this has been set up through Ontario Soccer is the criteria of the National Youth Club license are embedded into that OPDL review. So we're not going to need to come back to you and say, you need to give us 164 pieces of criteria or pieces of documentation to support these criteria so we can evaluate it. What we're going to be able to do is look through that and go, there's about 5 or 6 that are missing that we didn't see through the OPDL application. Here's our action plan. Can we see what you've done in that area? Can we help you to be able to get there? And can we see the things that you've sent to Ontario Soccer? Again, great honor for me to have been asked and a great opportunity for me to be able to learn. And thank you to Jason for allowing it to happen and to Canada Soccer. Actually, I'm going to sit on the committee that's going to review the OPDL application. So I'll already have a head start on reviewing those applications for OPDL. So again, as John said, this is an integrated process. We're in this together. We're pulling in the same direction. We're not running in different areas. We're working together as province and as country, and I hope as district and as club to be able to move this game forward in this country. So I'm excited about this. I hope you can tell. I'm really proud of where we've come to. I know we've got a lot of work to do, and I know it's not perfect, and I know we're going to learn. It's going to have warts. We're going to iron those out. We're going to get better, and I hope all of you are going to bear with us and help us to get better. And as Jason's done, have the honest conversations. Pick up the phone and say, Dave, why would you do it that way? What was your thinking here? This doesn't make sense. Let's work on this, because it's an evolving process. In complex environments, you need to allow for emergence. So what have we learned, and how do we react? It's not static. It's not, this is perfect. There's never going to be another way to do it, and if you don't do it this way, then you're wrong. Nah, that's not the way we're doing things anymore. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you think. We value your opinions, and we value your contributions, and we want that to be reflected in this program. It's not my program. It's not Gabe and Gabriella's program. It's not even Canada Soccer from a staff volunteer perspective program. It's our global program as a soccer community in Canada. I think it's unique. I think it's different. I think it's a Canadian approach to something that is happening around the world, and I think it's going to work. But we need people to buy in, we need people to believe in it, and we need people to be willing to have honest conversations and challenge each other to get better, because that's how we all get better. We don't get better by sitting in our comfort zone and not challenging each other and not being honest and open. So read through the documentation, ask questions. We've got an opportunity now, as we usually do, talked way longer than we were supposed to, but we've
It's
still
your fault, Dave.
Still got lots of time for questions.
We'll stay here as long as you want. I mean, I think one of the key things to understand is that this is not a punitive process at all for anyone. This is about helping clubs at every level of the game get better. We're going to have honest discussions with you. We're going to give you our feedback in relation to where you are based on the information that we have, on the research that we've done, and all of the different clubs and organizations, academies as well, that we've reviewed across the country. And we'll give you examples, templates of best practice. Right? So some of the points that we made earlier about the role of the technical director is unclear. We're going to help guide you. So if you're a board member that doesn't really know what a technical director is supposed to do or what a good technical director is supposed to do, we're going to help you understand that. We're going to give you templates. We're going to give you examples of what a great technical plan looks like. And I'm telling you, there are examples in this province of fantastic documentation, great planning documentation from a governance perspective, great strategic plans, great technical plans, great operational plans. But what we tend to do in this country is we hoard things. For those of you who saw the panel discussion, it was the bottles of water that I had with Ian Campbell. Those are mine, you can't have them, right? Why wouldn't you share those documents if you have great examples, right? Why don't we work together? That's really what this is about. It's about us working together with our provincial and territorial members to help them, to help you. It's not about rules. It's not about us being the police. It's not a game of cops and robbers. I don't want our staff or Ontario Soccer staff or anyone's staff to have to chase around after the bad guys. I want to encourage people to be better citizens. That one point about being a good corporate citizen, it's a hugely important thing. It's a hugely important thing because we're all in this together. We're not getting to the top of that mountain unless we work together. We just don't have the background, the history, the depth of talent in our country where we can make mistakes. We have to be the best at what we do in order to be the best in this region, to qualify for World Cups on the men's and the women's side, to be successful, to give our kids something to dream about, like I had in '86 when we qualified for the one World Cup. And a spark went off in my head, I want to do that. I didn't have the great fortune of a facility like this. By the way, put your hands together for Tom Partalis and the whole group that's built this facility. It's phenomenal. Is Tom in the room? He's probably working downstairs. This is one of the best facilities, indoor facilities in the country. And the kids here are very lucky, right? They're very lucky.
Last one for me before I promise to stop talking and take questions is the last piece that we want to do, and it's aligned to what Jason was saying, is we need to harness the power of yet. And for those that have done leadership training, you may have heard this statement before, but the way club licensing is designed is to talk about readiness. It's not you're not good enough. It's not you'll never be good enough. It's you're not there yet, and here's what we're going to do to help you get there if you want to get there. It's our job to work with those organizations, and by extension, it's Ontario Soccer's job and all of our provincial and territorial partners to be able to help you to become what you want to be. You may not be there today, but if you're willing to put the work in, it's our obligation to help you get there. It's not our job to say, no, you're not going to get there. And the more better clubs we have, the more better coaches we'll have, and the more better players we'll have. And I use this analogy as well, and I stole it from Jason, so don't tell him. If we were struggling in the education system, the way that we would have more better students is not to reduce the number of good schools and filter our best students into those environments and restrict the number of schools that are capable of being great and the number of good teachers. What we would do is create more better schools with more better teachers so we have more better students. And that's what we want. We want to work with those that want to work with us to help them get better. And when the time comes to be able to assess against criteria, we want to harness the power of yet. You're not there yet. And here's what we're going to do to help you get there if you're willing to put the work in. And that's what it's about for us. It's about helping everybody be the best that they can be. And I think Ontario Soccer are committed to that vision, and I know our staff at Canada Soccer is committed to that vision. So now I'm quiet. Questions?
So we'll take some questions from the audience. If you have a question, just raise your hand, and I'll give you a piece of advice that will do the opposite of what my wife tells me to do. My wife always says to me, you know you're not on the pitch anymore. You can use your inside voice. I tend to talk a little bit loud when I get excited. But use your on-pitch voice so the whole room can hear you if you have a question. Okay?
And Ontario Soccer are also willing to answer questions if it's more of an Ontario Soccer specific question that we can't answer as well. So they're on call and standby.
First brave gentleman there in the middle of the row.
Windsor Soccer Club down in Essex. Basically, we're running a club of 1,200 kids, volunteer-based completely. Basically, my wife and I and another family are running. This timing right now, this coming out, and the deadlines that you've imposed with regards to it, and the timing of us preparing for our season. How much time are we looking at encompassing here? Because I went through the Club Excellence program. I brought it down to Essex when it was introduced in Hamilton. And I brought it down there. And I know how much time was involved, my volunteer time, in doing this. What are we looking at here with regards to either level 1, the first part, or going the provincial youth?
That's a great question. And the first thing I want to do is commend you for putting in the hours. Running a club of 1,200 people, that's not a small club. That's actually, in most parts of the country, a very large club. And to do so with only volunteers has to be next to impossible. I'd urge you to consider a strategic initiative to try and get some staff that can actually run the program so that you and your wife can get your lives back, because I'm pretty sure you spend almost all of your time doing soccer things. So that's one piece of it. I'll let Dave chime in on this, but from my perspective, it's not urgent that you have to do this now, because as we've said earlier, this cycle is going to repeat year after year after year. So these timelines are going to repeat, and one of the beauties, and Dave won't take credit for this, but he should, is he's built it in such a way that it allows for continual growth, and it allows organizations to make the decision, well, you know what, we're not there yet, but we want to get there, so now you can map out how to get there. So it's not make or break that you have to do this today. If you think you can do this and you want to do this and you want to work with Ontario Soccer and by extension work with us and put in place a timeline to get there at this time next year, I'm okay with that. Right? It's not about putting a gun to anyone's head and saying you have to do this or you're done. We don't want that. We want to help you as an organization grow and fulfill your potential and be sustainable on an ongoing basis and put in place a map, a roadmap to have that sustainability.
Yeah. And I think specifically to the standards for quality soccer, which is our base level, based on my knowledge of the system in Ontario and some of the things that are already required here that aren't in other places across the country, I wouldn't anticipate that, especially having done club license or club excellence, that it would be a big process for you. If I may get the number wrong because some of them are information pieces, but I think there's about 11 criteria in the standards for quality soccer that would need to be tick boxes there. Some of those are doing already because it's a requirement of Ontario Soccer, respect and sport activity leaders, training, criminal record checks. Some of them are things that you should be able to do fairly quickly from an operational perspective. It might take a little bit longer to get your board approvals on policies, but that would be around things like code of conduct to protect children, guidelines for appropriate and inappropriate behavior between adults and children, reporting processes if you don't have those. And that's coming in our guide to safety, a fill in the blanks, what's your organization look like, and can we put our name here to be able to ensure that we have those policies and then communicate it within your club. So I don't anticipate that being a particularly onerous process at that level. As you move up in the categories, then it becomes a little bit more. I know some of the folks that have done National Youth Club license applications, it's a pretty lengthy and arduous process, but the goal with our standards for quality soccer is just those types of organizations. I'm from Saskatchewan. We'd kill to have a 1,200 person club. I'm not sure there's one in the country or in the province that's that big. We've got organizations that are literally 40 kids and 2 volunteers. And we want them to be able to access that program in the same way that big, strong, sophisticated, multi-million-dollar organizations can if they want to. So Standards for Quality Soccer is meant to be inclusive. It's generally designed to be doing things that we would expect that most organizations are doing already based around those kind of pillars of what our principles look like. And Ontario Soccer, based on their leadership, they've already taken you down that pathway with some of their requirements. So I wouldn't anticipate that that would be a particularly onerous. In terms of timelines, again, that's one of those emergence things that you say, you know what, we're busy trying to take registrations, find our coaches, get our schedules together, get our uniforms. We don't have those extra couple of hours in April, May, March to be able to do that. Here's a better time frame. Let's have those conversations so we can say, you know, maybe September's the right time to be able to do that. Maybe you have everything in place at that point and you have the time to be able to do it. So that's what I mean by emergence, things that are unintended consequences of the way that we've structured things with kind of best of intentions that we need to learn. And if this is crippling you, that's not what this is about. Is there another way that we can do that to be able to support you? And certainly I know Gabriella's been around talking to people and is always willing to have those conversations in Ontario specific. So that's a type of information that we need to know because that's within our control. If we're losing organizations because we said it had to be April, that's a problem. If April, because globally, that April, it doesn't have to be April. There's no other rationale than it works from a timeline perspective. So we need to know those types of things, and that's a great example of emergence.
Yeah, the London scenario is the same in Essex. It's the same in a lot of communities across our country. Yeah, it's a common trend. It's interesting though. We talk about this as a staff all the time. Our job is to build better relationships with Ontario Soccer and the other provincial members and the territorial members and to support them so that they can support you. It's not to tell them what to do and be dictatorial. We're not like that at all. If you ask them, we probably send them a little bit too much documentation and ask for feedback because it adds to their already onerous workload. But it is about adults behaving like adults. You know, the sign of a civilized society is the ability to have a discussion with someone with a different viewpoint to your own and not fall out if you have differing opinions. We need to do that better across the country at all levels of the game. You know, we're not going to agree on everything. If we did, it would be a boring world. You know, and that actually helps us get better as well. We had loads of conversations with the provinces as we built this process because if you look at what Ontario Soccer had previously, the Club Excellence program was an excellent program. It did a very good job. But we felt that that first step was a little too high to be the entry level because it's difficult to reach that first step, which is why we created the Standards for Quality Soccer. And then we worked with Ontario Soccer to kind of blend the 3 levels.
I think having a pathway that's safe will make it easier to bring the players on because in some instances you're reluctant to let a kid go into scenario where the club is going to use the player to make the club good instead of using the club to make a good player. So if we can standardize some of that, then it's easier to along.
Yeah, and safety, Jen, has a wide range of areas of responsibility. It's not just about being safe from physical harm, it's being safe from emotional harm, bullying, abuse, harassment, discrimination, that sort of thing. The kids need to be in a safe environment. But unless we have standards for things like that, how are we ever going to hold ourselves and each other accountable to that? If we're not trained in how to recognize situations where kids might be in vulnerable situations, and John talked about it this morning, are you going to be permissive, or are you going to be the one that stands up and says, that's not right, that can't be happening anymore? That's what we need to empower all of you to do. And that's going to happen through training and education, and by supporting each other, and by having those policies in place, for sure.
I have a question related to requirements of the recreation area for private companies. And you will have all the directors and all companies and the owners that have this.
Yep.
And for communities will be fine. Always you are responsible and how does that
So if everyone else didn't hear that, the question was about private academies. Do the same rules apply for private academies? Absolutely, they do. There are some slight variances in terms of the governance structure, and Dave's the first person to talk about that. The requirements are a little bit different. But what we've said right from the get-go was our definition, it's in the documentation on our website if you read it, our definition of a club is any organization that runs a soccer program and is a member of their provincial governing body. Any organization. We don't care if you're a nonprofit or a private organization. It doesn't matter to us. We want everyone who delivers a soccer program for children in this country to be part of this process, to be part of this program. We've got to stop having these parallel streams. You're a club, you go this way. You're an academy, you go this way, and never shall your paths cross. That doesn't make any sense. And credit to Dave again. Saskatchewan was the first province that broke down that barrier. And Ontario Soccer has done a lot of great work in that space to try and bring them together. But in Saskatchewan, there's no such thing as an academy. There's no such thing as a club. They're both called the same thing, member organization. They have equal rights, equal responsibilities, and they're treated the same. Can we get to that place in this province? Absolutely. But we have to work together.
I'm asking more from aspect of communication that we have to provide, comparing to what the club that are covered by board of directors or
Very similar. There's a handful of criteria that are slightly different, half different. So things around independence of board owners, board in discipline policies and those types of things is different in private academies because the board doesn't have the same role as what an owner would. In terms of all of the technical, exactly the same. In terms of the kind of legal requirements, the language is exactly the same, but obviously, as you would know, the legal requirements of a private organization are different from the legal requirements of a not-for-profit. But what we've said is you need to meet the legal requirements of your business status. So whether that be not-for-profit or whether that be a private organization. But the governance area is the only area that would be different in terms of the actual criteria themselves. All the on-field, all the admin, all those are exactly the same.
Yeah, you mentioned a few things in terms of providing further education and for senior members of GN board members, things like that. And the phrasing that you used, it seems like, is that only going to be available to those roles, or someone like myself, who I see myself in those roles in the future? Is that available to me ahead of time, or only when I get that role?
No, I mean, it's a great question. If you couldn't hear in the back, the question was revolving around professional development opportunities for senior leadership positions, executive leaders, technical leaders, that sort of thing. And would it only be available once you reach that level? No, it won't. It'll be available to anybody that wants to become better and to learn. There will be some prerequisites in place, and obviously in Ontario Soccer, because you're coming from the coaching world, we'll talk about the technical director diploma that they're currently running. That will be a prerequisite for the executive leadership program that we're developing. That's probably going to be in place in about 2021. It's going to take us some time. We've got 4 staff, and we're pretty busy, as you can imagine. But it's an exciting development opportunity that we're looking at, which we're going to do. We're going to develop. It's part of our own technical development plan within our department. So that will be open to anyone who wants to learn and get better. You know, we want to make sure that we can support your educational needs. And we don't want to be discriminatory. We want to be open, accessible, inclusive of everyone who wants to learn. And as Dave said earlier, if you want to work with us, we want to work with you. So I'm going to ask the last question. How many people here are volunteers? Please give these people a big round of applause.
I wouldn't have had a chance to fulfill my dream of pulling on the Canada jersey and playing for our World Cup team if it wasn't for volunteers. The game was driven by volunteers when I was a kid. I don't think coaches were paid back then, were they? You know, they weren't. I'm not convinced that the fact that they're being paid means that they're better now, because the same faces that I saw 35 years ago when I was a kid are still here now, and still coaching and still doing a great job. So you're the lifeblood of the game. And when we talk about professional soccer, we talk about the national team, it seems like it's a distant memory and it's way out of your grasp. It's not. Because the kids you're working with right now have a chance to become the next Christine Sinclair, the next Jessie Fleming, the next Shalina Zadorsky, right? That came out of this community and got to the highest level, right? So the work that you do every day is valuable and important. It can be soul destroying, the amount of work that's required to keep your club going. Keep doing it. We're here to help you. Ontario Soccer's here to help you. And if you need anything, don't be afraid to reach out. Send us an email, text, whatever you need. But thank you all for your time and your efforts. Please keep it up. Thank you.